This is as large as the city of Jerusalem ever became in the ancient world. It was 1 mile from north to south, 3/4 of a mile from west to east, and had about 90,000 inhabitants. Excuse me. Okay, I want to talk about the temple, so I'm going to turn around here, and you guys come out both sides where you can see, and we'll talk about the history of the temple a little bit. When Solomon builds the first temple, he comes to the peak of Mount Moriah and he builds the temple building. Now, like I said, nothing is here yet, just this temple building. But his temple doesn't look like this. This model is a model of King Herod's temple. King Solomon's temple was the same basic shape, but smaller. Herod's temple is 180 feet tall. Solomon's temple is 60 feet tall. Now, our temple out here in the courtyard is the size of Solomon's temple, 60 feet. But it's got the appearance of King Herod's temple. And this is just King Herod's temple here. But his temple, Solomon's temple, was the most beautiful one of all. It was covered in gold, inside and out, every square inch. And so it was just a glorious, beautiful building. Like I said, it lasted 400 years. The Babylonians come in, they destroy everything, take all the gold, go off into Babylon, and 70 years later, people come back. Ezra reinstitutes the law, Nehemiah rebuilds the walls, and Governor Zerubbabel rebuilds the temple. But Babylon doesn't give back all the gold. So when Zerubbabel rebuilds the temple, it's the same basic size of Solomon's temple, but it has no gold. And so the temple now looks like that wall over there. And the people call this, they nicknamed it the Ugly Temple. But that temple lasted longer than any other temple of Israel. It lasted 500 years. At the end of that time, the Romans have conquered the known world, and they've made Herod the Great the king. Now, Herod the Great is called the Great because he built incredible structures. In fact, the foundations of everything Herod built still exist in the world today, except for the foundation of the temple. Excuse me. They don't call him Herod the Great because he was a great guy. He was a terrible guy. He killed everybody, including his own wives and children. And the Jewish people rebelled against him. They didn't want to serve a king like that. And so he made a deal with the priest who sort of controlled the people. And he just said, you know, if we can stop all the fighting, I'll quit killing people, you quit fighting me, and I'll build you the biggest temple complex you've ever had. And they agreed to that. Well, he comes to Mount Moriah, where the little, quote, ugly temple is, and he wants to build this platform. This platform is 35 acres. Well, it's a small mountain, but it still has a peak on it. So you can't build a 35-acre platform on a peak. He's got to build up the sides until they reach the top of the peak. So he digs down to the bedrock on all 4 sides, and then he builds. Now, how many of you have been to Disney World? All right? How many of you have been to the Magic Kingdom? How many of you know that when you were walking down Main Street and watching the electrical parade and going to Cinderella's castle, that you were walking on the roof of a building? A couple of you knew that. Good. That building is huge. All those rides and everything, that's all on the roof of the building. Underground is a building. It's so big, they drive little cars and trucks down there. And they have cafeterias and locker rooms and maintenance rooms and everything they need to run the Magic Kingdom is down there. Well, that's kind of what Herod did. He essentially built a 3-story building to bring it up to the level of the peak of Mount Moriah. Then he paved it all over, and we've got this 35-acre platform. Well, then he comes and he builds this wall around the top of the platform, and on the inside of each wall, he builds a porch. Now, this is pretty good for us, really, as modern-day Christians, because we read the Bible, and it tells us wonderful things. And sometimes it tells us where those things happen. But we don't always know where those places are. So, when we read in the book of Acts that all the worship services of the early church take place under Solomon's portico, well, it doesn't exist today. So where was Solomon's portico? Some versions call it Solomon's colonnade. Well, because we know the layout of the temple, we know that the porch on the inside of the eastern wall is Solomon's portico. And that means that the Christian worship that you and I practice and enjoy today all begins right there under that porch on the inside of the temple courts. And so that's kind of exciting to know where those locations are. Now, the walls made a big court, and this court is called the Court of the Gentiles.